typical guy things at that age. And we knew each other for this long period of time, and then after high school, like most of you know, people kind of all go their separate ways. And it was like Rick just disappeared from the face of the earth. I didn't see him for a long time, and it wasn't until last year that I finally saw him again, and it was like Rick reappeared. And I found him at one of the strangest places. I went to a restaurant it was in Howard City called Northern Trails, and there was Rick at the bar, and I went over and talked with him and said, "Hi, how's it going, Rick?" And I try not to tell people that I'm going into ministry, going to be a pastor, because it kind of freaks people out. They really don't know how to respond to it. They get uptight, or they try to change and become super holy, or they have all these odd reactions. But Rick's reaction was a little bit different, and honestly, it kind of freaked me out. When I was talking to Rick, he shared with me his experience. He went into the Navy. I went to college. He went to the Navy, and he told me that he was involved in Satan worship. He said he was a Satanist, and I kind of was like, "Wow, really?" And I didn't say those exact words, but I was thinking it, and it really shocked me. And I kind of had a vibe of what people feel like when I tell them that I'm going to be a pastor, talking about these spiritual things that they don't really understand. And I don't fully understand what he went through, but he did share some of his experiences. He told me that at times he would become possessed by a demon, it was like he was seeing through someone else's eyes, and he would torment other people on the ship. And he told me that afterwards he would feel terrible about it. And I was thinking to myself, well, that's how it works with most sins. It feels good at the moment, but then later on you feel terrible. And it was kind of a little scary just to hear about that and what he went through. And I definitely could see that it was a struggle with him, that it was something that he didn't want in his life, something that he hated, and yet it was there. And I've also had experience with evil spirits, not inside me, but outside me. It usually happens in the middle of the night when I'm sleeping, and I'll wake up and I'll have this sense of anxiety and fear going on inside of me, and it's just the strangest feeling. The best way that I could describe it would be like being in the middle of the woods in the dark and hearing growling all around you. That's the kind of anxiety and fear that you feel, and it's like it won't go away. And so whenever this would happen, it was usually in my sister's old room when I was sleeping in there, so it kind of makes me wonder what she was up to. But when I would go through this, I would pray and read the Bible and just beg God to release this from me, to send the demons away, send whatever evil spirit was attacking me away. And one time it lasted, it seemed like 30 minutes or more, and it was just the worst feeling ever. And I know most of you probably haven't had an experience like that. It usually happens to pastors or other people that God's trying to use. But we also, normally, we experience other spiritual issues going on in our lives. They may not look like a demon possession or waking up in the middle of the night with this feeling around you, anxiety and fear and feeling evil presence around you. But it's much sneakier than that. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the Screwtape Letters from C.S. Lewis. And on one of the letters, they talk about how Satan works differently, how he likes to sneak into people's lives in ways that they don't really expect, and where they're not really aware of, where they're thinking. And a lot of this, I think, Satan's playing into our culture. We have a very naturalist culture. We don't, if it's it's not something we can feel or experience or touch, we kind of dismiss it as something that's not there. And so Satan kind of plays into that, and even things that we would probably characterize as medical things like depression, anxiety, addictions, or any number of those things that are real everyday problems that we have. There are also real spiritual things that are happening behind those things. It's so easy that we can just kind of dismiss it as a medical problem. We may just go to the doctor, and that's fine. I definitely believe in going to the doctor or a counselor if you need it, but we definitely need to go to God before that. Pastor Jim told me when I was explaining some of these to him that you should put a cross in your window because the evil spirits don't like crosses. And I think that's a great image of how we should react whenever we're dealing with any of these things, like drug addictions, anxiety, depression, all of those everyday things. We need to look at the cross. We need to have that cross in our lives. And we can also experience these evil forces in putting other things before God. Satan loves to get our eyes off of Jesus. He loves to get us looking at that brand new car or that attractive lady or that nice house that we always want. But he's just kind of sneaking in and getting us to lower our guard and to pursue these things rather than God. I see anything that takes us away from God as sin. And it's so easy that we can have these checklists. Oh, I didn't do that today, I didn't do that today, I didn't do that today. But Satan is much more sneaky than that. Like that list can even become something that becomes a sin in our lives. We can become so obsessed with checking that list out. Oh, I didn't do these things. And yet really you're following this list rather than Christ. And there's a lot of things that we can actually learn from a demon-possessed man in the Bible on how we should deal with these evil spirits in our lives and how we should deal with these struggles that are affecting us so deeply, and yet we tend to dismiss them as merely natural things that just happen in this world. And we need to remember that there's a spiritual world out there that we don't all understand and that we can't really see, but it's really out there and it's really affecting every aspect of our lives. So let's look at Mark chapter 5, verses 1 through 20. They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an evil spirit came from the tomb to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had often been chained hand and foot. But he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and the hills he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Swear to God that you won't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you evil spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send him out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on a hillside nearby. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs. Allow us to go into them." He gave them permission, and the evil spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd of about 2,000 in number rushed down the steep bank and into the lake and were drowned. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the towns and countryside. And the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons, sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man, and told about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged him to go with him. Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your family and tell them how much the Lord has done for you, and how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. So we can learn a lot of things from the scripture. One thing that we learn is that demons are subject to God's authority. The demon that was in the man went up to Jesus, and Jesus commanded the demon to come out of him. And he submitted himself to Jesus. Honestly, I think demons have a better sense of God's power than we do. They could see all of these spiritual things going on behind the scenes that we don't see. And they're able to experience a lot more of that than we are. That being said, what God says, we have to know that we need to run from these evil influences. Whether it's demon possession or anxiety or bad habits, and all of these things distract us from God. Jesus also knew what that man needed and wanted before he even asked. Although the evil spirit was kind of taking hold of the man, Jesus was able to see that, obviously this isn't good. This is something that this man is struggling with. And Jesus took care of it for him. And he can do the same for us too. Even if we're so caught up in our sin that we don't even see it. He can make it clear to us. He can show us that this is in our lives. And a lot of times he uses other people to show us. Either our spouse or a close friend. Any number of these people are usually there and they're able to spot these things. And when we feel convicted, we need to remember to turn to Christ, because he's the only one that can really free us from these things, just like the demon possession. Another thing we need to learn from this man is that he humbled himself and fell at Jesus' feet. Now, I know he was possessed by the demon at this point, but I believe that man, in his heart, was humbled, and that it was really the man that fell at Jesus' feet, and not the evil spirit controlling him. Now, there's kind of that double-edged thing where the demons are being subject to Jesus, and yet this man is also humbling himself before God. And it's really hard for us to visualize, because we never experienced anything like it. But we can just see, I think we can see how deep and distressed that man was when he was going through all of this, when he falls at Jesus' feet and submits himself to Jesus. And in the same way, whenever we're struggling with these things, we need to fall at Jesus' feet and just let him probe us, let him have mercy on us. I mean, we need to confess our sins. We need to go to him whenever we struggle, whenever we have these uncontrollable things, that whether it's sin or an addiction or depression, we need to go to him. The name that this demon gave was Legion, and the name comes from the Roman Empire. It was actually 6,000 soldiers that made up a legion. And that shows just how many of these evil spirits were possessing the man. Now, I don't know if it was 6,000 exactly, but we know that it was a lot. And it also shows the power, the magnitude of Jesus' power to control these spiritual things that we don't see. Jesus told to leave, and it had to leave. And that being said, we know that God is strong enough to free us from anything that we're going through, anything that's holding us captive. No matter how strong it is, no matter how depressed we get about it, no matter how weak we feel when we go through it, Jesus is so stronger than it. Jesus freed this man from his captivity. And that's really the best way to describe it. He was held captive by these demons. And I really can't imagine how terrible that would be to have something inside you that you can't control that's controlling you. And yet a lot of these real life issues that we have, like depression, I don't know anybody that would want to have that. And I'm sure they don't feel in control at all. I've had lows, I wouldn't say that I was ever quite depressed, but I've had times where I feel like I want to be happy, I want to experience this joy again, and yet I feel like it's holding me captive, it's holding me back, this depression or this despair that's in me or around me. Jesus was also fulfilling what was written about him in Isaiah. And this is one of my favorite verses, and I know I've said it before. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives, and release from darkness for the prisoners. And I can't imagine a better image for this than that verse, because Jesus was really freeing that man from his captivity. And he was shedding light on this man's darkness and releasing him from this prison that he was in. It's kind of funny that people were, well, it's not funny, but people were chaining this man down, and that couldn't even restrain him. And somehow they were trying to fix this problem inside this man by chaining him down. But really this man was already in chains. He was held shackled by these evil spirits. And in the same way, we can be held captive by our addictions or our want for more or any number of these sins. Any of our sins can hold us captive, especially if it's something that we constantly think about, something that is always on our mind and on our hearts, other than God and trying to please him. So we see that it's clear that there are spiritual forces going on behind the scenes. Things that we don't really understand, but they're affecting us in ways that we might not have noticed before. And even though other people might dismiss it as small or insignificant, I don't know if anybody's been depressed, but some people might say, hey, you've got a sin problem, that's why you're depressed. But really it could be a medical problem, or it could be just a biological problem, or it could just be a completely spiritual problem, and we could get so sidetracked on what other people think and whatever they're trying to diagnose and they're trying to say to us, and that can really make us more depressed, or it can make us more anxious if we're struggling with anxiety. People might tell us, hey, just get over it. But it's impossible on our own if it's truly a spiritual battle that's going on behind the scenes. You can also learn from the teaching that Jesus said to his disciples.